All right, today we're tackling a huge idea, federalism. It's this incredible system for governing massive, super diverse countries. And get this, it shapes the daily lives of nearly half the people on Earth. So, yeah, it's kind of a big deal. Let's dive in.
So let me just throw this at you. Put yourself in charge of a country like India. In just one census, they found over 1,300 different languages that people call their mother tongue. Seriously, how do you even begin to build a government where everyone feels like they have a voice? Well, a huge part of the answer is federalism.
At its heart, federalism is actually a pretty simple concept. You've got at least two levels of government. There's a central government for the big picture stuff, things that affect the whole country. And then you have state or provincial governments that handle the day-to-day business in their own areas. The key thing to remember is that each level has its own power that the other can't just take away.
Now, one of the best ways to really understand federalism is to look at what it's not. In a federal system, like the one in Belgium, power is shared. The national government can't just tell the state governments what to do. But in a unitary system, like Sri Lanka's, all the power is at the top. The central government can basically give orders to the local units because, well, it's the only boss in town. It's a totally different philosophy of power.
So, what's in the recipe for a true federal system? There are a few ingredients you just can't skip. You've got to have multiple levels of government, and each one needs its own turf, its own jurisdiction. Crucially, the right to exist has to be written into the Constitution, which can't be changed on a whim by just one side. You also need a referee, right? That's where the courts come in to settle disputes. And maybe most importantly, each level needs its own money, its own sources of revenue, so they can actually be independent.
You know, what's really interesting is that federations come in two main flavors. First, you've got the coming together type, like the USA. That's where independent states decided to team up, mostly for security, while holding on to a lot of their own power. Then there's the holding together model, like India. This is where a big, diverse country decides to divide its own power up to better manage all its different regions. And in that model, the central government usually ends up being a little more powerful.
Okay, so let's zoom in on India and see how this all plays out in the real world. How does that holding together idea go from a theory to the actual constitutional blueprint for a nation of more than 1 billion people?
Here's a fascinating little detail. If you actually read the Indian Constitution, you'll never find the word federation. Nope, it calls India a union of states. But at the end of the day, it's not about the word. The entire government, the whole system, is built on those core federal principles we've been talking about.
So how is the power actually carved up? The Constitution lays it out in this really clear three-part system. You've got the union list for things like defense and banking. Only the central government can touch those. Then there's the state list for stuff like local police and agriculture. That's the state's domain. And then there's this interesting one, the concurrent list, with things like education. Here, both can make laws, but if their laws ever clash, the central government's law wins out.
But here's the thing. Having it all written down in a constitution is one thing. The real test of federalism is how it actually works, in the messy, day-to-day reality of politics. So let's look at how the spirit of federalism has really come alive in India over the years.
The first really big test for Indian federalism was reorganizing states based on language. Now, back in the day, some leaders were terrified this would tear the country apart. But you know what? The exact opposite happened. Drawing the state lines to match where languages were spoken actually made the country more united and way easier to govern. It showed that respecting people's identities was a strength, not a weakness.
And this chart on language, wow, it just makes it so clear why that respect was essential. Just look at these numbers. Hindi is the biggest single group, sure, but it's still spoken by less than 44% of people. No single language has a majority. This visual alone tells you why trying to force one language on everyone would have been a complete disaster.
So, knowing this, India's leaders were really smart and cautious. They made Hindi the official language, but they also constitutionally protected 22 other major languages. That flexibility, that willingness to accommodate instead of impose, helped India avoid the kind of brutal conflicts over language that have ripped other countries apart.
The power dynamic between the central government and the states has also changed. A lot. Before about 1990, a single party often ran the show at both levels, and the center sometimes threw its weight around. But after 1990, powerful regional parties emerged, which meant coalition governments became the norm, and that was a total game changer. It forced a new culture of bargaining, of sharing power, and of respecting that the states had their own rights.
But the story doesn't end with the states. In a country this gigantic, power sharing has to go even deeper. It has to go all the way down to the villages and towns. And that's the whole idea behind decentralization.
So what is decentralization? It's really just what it sounds like. It's the process of taking some power from the top 2 tiers and handing it down to a 3rd tier, local government. The thinking is simple. The people who actually live in a place are the ones who best know how to solve its problems.
And if you want to understand the incredible scale of this, just look at this number. There are about 3.6 million elected representatives in India's local governments. That is more than the entire population of many countries. It is without a doubt the biggest experiment in grassroots democracy happening anywhere on the planet.
And this system has a really clear, logical structure, especially in rural areas. It starts at the bottom with the Gram Panchayat, which is basically the village council. You group a few of those together and you get a Panchayat Samiti. Then, you take all the Samitis in a district and they form the Zilla Parishad at the top. It's like a 3-step ladder of democracy, bringing government right to people's front doors.
So when you boil it all down, what's the big takeaway? It's this. Federalism isn't just a dusty set of rules in a book. Its success comes from the spirit behind it. It's a living, breathing thing, a constant process of negotiation and compromise, all resting on a bedrock of trust and the simple desire to live together as one country.
And that kind of leaves us with one last thing to chew on. This whole system is a delicate balancing act, a constant negotiation. And as our world gets more and more diverse, the real question is, how does this balance of power need to keep shifting and evolving to meet the challenges of the future? It's a question we're thinking about. Thanks for tuning in.